Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I am Bobby Lauer, the president of Campus Compact, and we are so appreciative that you've taken time out of your day to be with us today. Today's conversation is going to focus on an initiative that Campus Compact is deeply invested in with our partners at CoGenerate. The initiative is called Campus CoGenerate, and it's been built off a body of work that we've been advancing since about this summer that focuses on the power and the opportunity of bringing together college students and older adults to advance and find solutions to the most pressing problems we're seeing. This work makes all the sense in the world for Campus Compact to be invested in, since our role is working with colleges and universities around the country to help them fulfill and expand their public mission through civic and community engagement. And I can't think of a time when the need for us to find new ways of working, new opportunities, and new partners to bring to the table to advance the very critical and challenging situation that we're finding ourselves in and that our communities are facing. So what are we going to do today together? We're going to first talk to you a bit more about what cogeneration is all about, give you some background, some laying of the groundwork, as they say, and then we're going to get into showing you what it can look like, what success can look like, show you some models. We're in this process, we're going to highlight 4 different campuses that are advancing cogeneration projects and initiatives, and you're going to hear directly from them of what it takes to get this kind of work off the ground, what are the challenges along the way, and what is the impact of the work. We're then going to hear a bit of a summary of what we've been doing together as partners between CoGenerate and Campus Compact, and that has been led by NJ Pierce, who is an Advanced Leadership Initiative fellow that we have been so blessed to have on the team this past fall. And she's been talking to people around the country, trying to get a sense of what are the pain points to advance this concept of cogeneration? What would it look like to be doing this work with real depth and impact? And she's going to talk to you about what she's found and what we think that might begin to give us in terms of a roadmap forward. And then we're going to have time to talk to each other and to engage you in talking to us and being honest around what kind of support would you need? What are the resources that are needed to move this work forward? So to get us started, I'm excited to welcome somebody that many of you know well, Phyllis Siegel. Phyllis is a senior fellow with CoGenerate, and she has been working in this space for decades. She is one of the thought leaders of cogeneration and intergenerational national service in general, and I have been lucky enough to get to know her over the past 6 months. Phyllis Siegel has also serves on the boards of the JFK Library Foundation and the Eli and Phyllis Siegel Citizen Leadership Program, which she co-founded at Brandeis University. So welcome, Phyllis.
Bobby, thank you so much for that very kind invitation. I am so excited to be here with you and all the participants because I think this is a spectacular initiative. You know, we are in a country that is described as the most age-segregated society in the world, and yet college campuses stand out as oases of age integration as younger students learn alongside older students and are taught by a multi-generational faculty. In addition, the staff is multi-generational. And also among the most important stakeholders for colleges and universities are the alums of all ages, which continually embrace new generations. I like to think of campuses as having naturally occurring diversity by the way they operate and the programs they run. This makes campuses an optimal place to test and scale generations working with each other, not simply being in the same room as each other. And compared to other venues in our society, that is really a unique opportunity. One of the reasons it's valuable to encourage people across generations to work with each other is that ageism infects all ages. Stereotypes and negative beliefs about people who are older or younger than we are get in the way of collaboration and bringing the best ideas to solving problems. And particularly important today is that those stereotypes, those myths, negative feelings about people of different generations fuels the polarization that has such a strong grip on our country. One of my favorite writers, Anne Applebaum, has said in Atlantic Magazine that the best way to bridge divides is to change the conversation by bringing people together with the shared purpose of solving a problem. They get to look at the problem and not at whatever has been keeping them apart. Cogeneration is a strategy to bring older and younger people together to collaborate and to connect community in order to solve critical social problems and bridge divides. This starts with age diversity. That's a necessary first point. It's necessary but not sufficient, and campuses have a big leg up on that because campuses are age diverse. But that's just the beginning. As I said, it's necessary but not sufficient. So I became interested in cogeneration after taking a close look at how national service has been held back by being largely age segregated. Some of the programs within national service are limited to participants of defined ages. For example, the National Civilian Conservation Corps is limited by statute to young people. I think it's 19 to 26. Foster grandparents, senior companions to other service programs are limited to only older adults. I think you have to be 55 or older to get into those programs. So that's not the general rule. There are lots of national service programs that aren't age defined, but even when that's the case, participants can be clustered in certain age groups. For example, the last time I looked at the numbers, 84% of participants in AmeriCorps direct service programs were 29 or younger, and only 5% of participants were 50 or older. For sure, there are many service programs where different age groups work in projects which I would describe as across generations, where younger service members help an older people, or vice versa. Older service members help younger people, for example, college students volunteering in senior centers, older people helping younger people apply to colleges, or tutoring in early childhood programs. But even when national service is age diverse, and even when it is the service one's doing is cross-generational, it's very hard to find places where service members and volunteers are actually working together rather than just alongside each other. Recent research tells us that the interest in what I'm terming cogeneration, working together, is widely held. NORC at the University of Chicago did a poll of more than 1,500 respondents, finding that 80+% say they want to work with other generations, 25 years older or younger than themselves. And well over half strongly agree that working across generations can help America solve our pressing problems. This adds up to a huge opportunity for campuses to seize. First, you don't have to struggle to be age diverse. Second, Campus Compact has already identified many examples where campuses are intentionally bringing the diverse ages to collaborate together. I know we're going to hear from a few of those examples in this webinar. Third, it is in the DNA of higher education to learn from what you do. And that's what we need to do right now. We need to learn what works and what doesn't. All of this adds up to an opportunity to experiment more, find out what works, grow it, and for campuses to, in yet one more way, lead the way to show America, this time, the power of cogeneration. I hope that every participant in this webinar will see ways in which you can help move this forward. Thanks very much. Bobby asked me to talk about why I'm excited about this initiative, and I can do that very easily because, in a nutshell, in a country that's aptly described as the most age-segregated society in the world, college campuses stand out as an oasis of age integration. Campuses have what you could call naturally occurring age diversity, as younger students learn alongside older students and are taught by a multi-generational faculty, have a staff that is multi-generational. And among the most important stakeholders for colleges and universities, of course, are the alums, who are of all ages, and each year new generations get added. So it makes campuses an optimal place to test and scale generational efforts that bring older and younger together, not just to simply be in the same room, but to work with each other. And that is the meaning of cogeneration. Why is it important? It's important because ageism infects all ages, stereotypes, negative beliefs about people who are older or younger than we are, get in the way of collaboration to find the best ideas, the best solution to problems. And it also fuels the polarization that has such a strong grip on every facet of our society. One of my favorite authors, Anne Applebaum, said it well in the Atlantic magazine when she wrote that the best way to bridge divides is to change the conversation, and a good way to change the conversation is to bring people together with a shared purpose, in particular, a shared purpose of solving a problem. So cogeneration is a strategy to do that. A strategy to bring people together, to collaborate, to connect. And that starts with age diversity. As I said, campuses have a big leg up on that. It already exists, but that's just the beginning. It's a necessary and not a sufficient element of cogeneration. I became interested in this after taking a close look at how national service has been held back by being largely age segregated. I've been involved in national service since the creation of AmeriCorps back in 1993, and I have followed it in a lot of different ways and been directly involved as well. As I took that closer look, what was striking to me is recognizing that some of the programs within national service are explicitly limited to participants of defined ages. Foster grandparents, senior companions are only for adults 55 and older. The National Civilian Conservation Corps is only for young people. But even when programs aren't age defined, participants can be clustered in certain age groups. The most recent numbers I took a look at showed that almost 85% of all AmeriCorps direct service members are under the age of 29, and only 5% are 50 and older. There are many service programs, to be sure, and you probably know about them on your campuses, where people of different age groups work in projects to help a younger or older generation than they are. But even where national service is age diverse and where programs cut across the age divide, are cross-generational, if you will, it's hard to find places where service members and volunteers are actually working together. We at CoGenerate know from research by NORC at the University of Chicago that there's great interest in doing this, and that there is a strong measure of agreement that working across generations can help America solve our pressing problems. This adds up, in my book, to a huge opportunity for campuses to seize. First, you don't have to struggle with becoming age diverse, like so many other institutions. Second, Campus Compact, through the research done by NJ, has identified many examples where campuses are already intentionally bringing the diverse ages together to collaborate. Third, it is in your DNA to learn from what you do. This adds up. It adds up to an opportunity to experiment more, grow what works, learn from what you do, and lead the way to show America the power of cogeneration. I can't think of a better or bigger contribution to add to the many contributions that colleges and universities already make. I'm excited to learn from the programs and campuses that will be featured and to participate throughout this afternoon to get to know you all, to answer any questions you have. Over and out.
Thank you, Phyllis. We're going to get myself spotlit here. Wonderful. I'm Eunice Lynn Nichols, and I am the co-CEO of CoGenerate, formerly Encore.org. And I'm really excited to be here with Bobby, with Phyllis, both incredible women who are doing so much, both for campuses, innovation, national service, you name it. And I'm eager today because I'm joined by 4 other amazing innovators who are doing work to bring generations together on college campuses. As Phyllis mentioned, CoGenerate is really, our main goal is to bring generations together, to bridge divides, to support innovation that does that, and then help sustain that work over time. We think that campuses are one of the most important places to do that. It's where young people are at, where they're starting out and they're learning, but campuses are also the place where community surrounds the campus, can be on campus, and then the borders are actually very porous. We've heard that through interviews with you, and I'm excited to be able to introduce these panelists who are doing the hard work of bringing generations together. Our goal for this session is to help all of us expand our thinking about the opportunity for cogeneration to transform higher education, including seeing the many different paths for cogenerational work to launch and grow within a university system, and to see the profound impact it can have on students, the university, and the greater community. And so I want to leave lots of room for our experts to speak today. So I'm going to just get us started with our first panelist is going to be Deki Alexander. She's the professor of drama and theater education at Eastern Michigan University and the director of Engage at EMU. Which is an office whose mission is to cultivate community and university collaboration. So Deki is incredibly committed to creativity. And I think anytime creatives intersect with innovation, there's just an explosion of opportunity. So Deki, I want to start by asking you to briefly describe the Intergenerational Training Institute that you are part of, and to help us understand both where it's situated in the university, why it even exists, and how it was launched.
Okay, well, I'm really honored to be here. So thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, NJ. So the International Ypsilanti Intergenerational Community Solutions Institute, or we're calling it YISCI, is a collaboration with Generations United, and it's funded actually, and I think that's important for a lot of my colleagues here to know, through Michigan Health Endowment, and it's just about to launch. It is an intergenerational training and design institute, and that the hope is we're going to bring key stakeholders, and a stakeholder could be a policymaker, could be alum, as somebody said, Phyllis talked about earlier. It could be our neighbor who has a house next to the university, and we're collecting them in our county for a series of gatherings to really collaboratively, emphasis on the to learn about intergenerational issues and plan intergenerational initiatives that will ideally maybe sort of reduce social isolation and health outcomes for all generations. It might also shine a light on certain social issues that might be relevant to both generations in our community, like recreation access or food security, or in our particular area, shelter access, which is really significant across generations. But I think it's really important to know, how do we get here? So we had this really organic happened, as Phyllis was talking about, kind of organically happened, relatively successful intergenerational virtual storytelling workshop that happened at the height of the pandemic called Regen. And it happened because there was a want to do, and there was a need from a funder to do generational programming, but nothing was working. So somebody knows I'm a theater and storyteller person, so they came to me and we created this space community for intergenerational storytelling exchange. And it was intentionally a co-space, co-learners, co-creators, co-listeners in one space. It wasn't an older adult listening to a younger adult. It wasn't a younger adult transcribing an older adult. It began at a place of co. And what we realized in that moment is that this time that happened over months really helped to lessen the isolation and social isolation of college students and older adults in the county. And then we started working with Generations United and thought we should really proliferate this idea of an institute across our county and see looking at things intergenerationally, or actually more co-generationally, as a way to solve individual problems or collective challenges. And so that's kind of how it came into being. It has two phases. The first one is going to be more informational. The second is the design part in that spring, and it's for organizations. It's for individual organizations that might just be youth serving, that might just be older adult serving, or might be serving collectively. It could be for an individual artisan of sorts that wants to be able to figure out how to cultivate this work. And it can also end up being a meetup for organizations to see, I didn't realize you were on this side of the street and I'm on this side of the street. Oh, we should maybe cross the street and maybe work together. We're situated, because I know that's important because I teach at a college. We are situated in an institutional office. We don't have an Osher program. University of Michigan down the block does, but we do not. We have something called Engage, and it is an office of community collaboration and strategic partnerships. And we are equally situated in community as we are the university. So that allows us, I think, kind of organically to be able to create an institute like this that can help really foster not just engagement, but possibilities, and see this kind of institute as a way to solve local and collective problems.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can you, I'm going to ask you to follow up with just a brief description. You have one specific intergenerational program amongst several that's called the Digital Connecting Core, which, as I understand it, is about brings younger people, college students, in to help train older adults to get them online. I've seen many of those programs around. What I feel is unique about yours is you're really intentional about making sure that it is mutually beneficial. Can you say how you make it mutual?
So I'm a theater artist, and how you begin is often how it evolves. And if you begin at a place of reciprocity, it's going to stay this way. So we embedded it in two things. We embedded it in an occupational therapy curriculum. And part of the essence of that and their curriculums, now it's integrated, is that it is going to, because part of their curriculum is about working with, not for somebody. So partly doing that by embedding this kind of program in there, you've already kind of set it up to be about relationships and not about serving, if that makes sense a little bit. So that makes it a little distinction. I think the key part of why it's been successful is that there's consistency. It meets every Tuesday standing room only at senior centers across the county. And older adults saying, here's what I need. I need to really understand how to do Google Docs. I don't know. So that the college students get together and they create workshops to reflect the wants and needs of the community. And what it does for a college student says, oh, I have something to offer in this work. Like, I can figure out how to think about how I do this and work and be able to communicate it to my neighbors. And so because there's consistency, because there's a mutuality, and because older adults are asking younger adults, here's the kinds of things that we're needing to look at, versus us saying, here's what you should learn, there is some real, I think, mutual and reciprocity, and in all honesty, a really beautiful sustainability because of it.
I love that. Thank you.
Yep.
The idea that you end where you start is so important. And I think what you'll hear from all of our panelists today is just the importance of being intentional about how you design your
Absolutely.
programs. So I'm going to have you stay here, but we're going to add Roderick
Okay.
Heath to the conversation. So Roderick is the director of the African American Male Initiative in the Division of Student Affairs at North Carolina Central University. He is also the CEO and founder of Generation Uplift and the Higher Education Black Male Collective. And Roderick is particularly special to me because he's also in our cohort of Gen to Gen Innovation Fellows this year at CoGenerate. So I'm really pleased that you're able to join us. Roderick, I would love for you to briefly describe the cogenerational student-led film project you're leading and to help us understand where that's situated within the university and your broader work.
Thank you for the opportunity. I want to say first, I just switched jobs. So now at Fayetteville State University as a vice chancellor of student affairs, which has a 30% adult learner population. So this is right on time. So it's heavy populated with adult learner. But speaking of my project came about, even as a child, I always was attracted to older people. I always wanted to be around them. My mother and grandmother said I always would sit around the older generation and just learn and talk, learn to play chess and everything through that. But also I looked at the generation now, how social media and media has divided. And when I say divide, I'm not saying in a bad way. Like you said, teaching them how to do Google Docs. There's so many apps, this younger generation, they learn new things every day. So as you're an older adult, you don't have time to keep up with the latest trends all the time. And so also just looking at when older people leave this world, all the history that goes with them, and those stories have never been told. And so I said, well, there's so much technology, there's YouTube. How do we preserve these stories? And so started getting with my young men and bridging Black males and older Black males and younger Black males together to solve world problems. You know, going into these senior homes for some of these men are stressed out. You know, they used to be a young, vibrant young man. Now he's confined to a wheelchair in a senior place. How do we go in there and learn those stories and keep their minds, young, just engaging? And so I want to tell these stories throughout North Carolina because I know Western North Carolina to Eastern North Carolina, the stories are going to be different. The people are going to be different. And it's a way for students to come together to talk about world problems and people who actually witnessed and lived from another generation and tell them how things have changed. And the younger generation say, I know you see it this way, but this is what we're seeing right now. How can we meet in the middle and discuss how we can help each other? And so that's how my project came about. And we really just going in, talking to all types of men, from pastors to homeless men to working men to educated men. I want to get every story from every aspect, from every angle. So that's what we do.
Wonderful. A quick follow-up question on that. Why do you think a college should care or a university should care about connecting its students? And you really have a very broad-based view of what your students could and should be doing out in the world as a student. Why should that matter in their education?
Well, I'll say one, because you're coming into a new city, you're coming into a place of education, right? And so you need to, when you come to whichever college you decide to attend, I think you should buy into that community. I mean, I know it's a quick 4 years, but you'll be connected to this college for the rest of your life. And I feel like coming in and teaching these young men that even when you go back to your own communities, know your history, not just where your family from or the neighborhood where you're from, know your entire history. Because I found out about some history about my hometown, but it took me going to a college in Durham to find, I lived there all my life and never knew this. So that intrigued me. So I'm saying students, it's a way for students to get out and engage. And these are the next generation of leaders. These are the people who are going to run the world one day. So they need to be knowledgeable and they need to know everything that's going on. So that's my mission, is to get these students engaged in politics and the city ordinance, anything that's going to affect their life from years to come. They need to know, at least inquire about it and know something about it. And lastly, I'll say, oftentimes young men or young ladies are going in conversations and really don't know what they're talking about, but they want to be in the conversation. And my grandfather always told me, if you don't know something, don't be the dummy in the conversation. Sit back and listen and go back and do your research. So when that conversation comes back around, you can get in there and talk and speak your piece. And so that's what I want to teach the students: be knowledgeable and don't just talk or listen to anybody. They can give you information. I think the older generation is the perfect example of, they had to read, they had to really do the research. It wasn't quick by the phone, look it up. They had to really study this information and be knowledgeable on it. So that's what I want to do.
Thank you, Roderick. Love that. Love that. Well, this is a perfect segue to our next panelist, Rachel Wenbrick from Drexel University. She's the founding director of Writers' Room, which is Drexel's university/community literary arts program. And I am meeting Rachel for the first time, but I know she has a deep passion for leveraging the arts and creativity for change. So you're just like coming right after Roderick. I would love you to describe the Writers' Room and the Tripod Photography Program, which is a 3-gen approach to using creative arts to unleash people's minds and action in the community. So help us understand where that work is situated within Drexel and how it was launched and why it exists.
Sure, absolutely. First, thank you so much, everyone. So happy to be here and honored to be with so many experts who've been leading this work. So Writers' Room is Drexel's University Community Literary Arts Program. So what that means is from our founding, we co-created with our neighbors. So we're 18 to 80s and diverse in just about every way you can imagine. We launched as an initiative of the president and the senior vice provost for university community partnerships, but we're now a center of the College of Arts and Sciences with partnerships across the university. And Tripod is one of our programs. It's a writing and photography year-long residency, artist residency. It's with sponsorship from Canon, and they've been a wonderful partner. We're now in year 6 of that program. Writers' Room is in year 9. We've been intergenerational from jump, though. And so in Tripod, our college students work with high school students and our seasoned neighbors to tell stories of their lives here in Philadelphia. It's been a really wonderful experience, and especially having that year-long trajectory together. Even though it starts out as a year, we still have alumni who, continue to be engaged and come back and celebrate birthdays and graduations and all sorts of, wonderful things.
Thank you. Okay, Rachel, I'm excited to have you here because while I was intrigued by this 3-gen program you have through the Writers' Room, I also know that you are dabbling in many other places. And I heard that you're working on a cogenerational program that's solving some real world problems, including elder displacement and economic security, called the Second Story Collective. So I think folks here would love to know just a little bit about that as well.
Sure. So at the end of our first season of Writers' Room, which was in 2015, one of our founding members was displaced when a developer bought her building to flip it to student housing. So she and her family were displaced. And so that was really the moment when we really understood we were implicated in each other's stories. And I'm noticing that Decky, storyteller and story sharing, Roderick, storytelling and story sharing, and here we are, right? And so that really, Carol's displacement really planted the seed for, how we could creatively solve a problem together. It was really wonderful to come together and create an intergenerational community through sharing art and food and life together. But if we could create that community, we needed to act as community. And so we've been working on, since then, developing this art-centered model for intergenerational co-living, which really is addressing 3 of our community and we think our country's most pressing needs, which is aging in place options, affordable housing options, and social cohesion.
Okay, wonderful. I'm sure there are others that will have more questions about that, but I appreciate how I think you've said at some point that Drexel really focuses on how to help students see how their education is relevant to real world problems, and the cogenerational work you do helps to make that bridge really apparent. Okay, I'm going to bring on our 4th and final panelist, Shane Snipes. He is the assistant professor, deputy chairperson, business management at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. Really glad to have you here, Shane. So you are, I think, a little bit different than the 3 before, who all have this sort of creative arts and storytelling background. You're really solidly rooted in the world of business and entrepreneurship. So I'm glad that we have you as a sort of different touch point with cogenerational innovation. I'd love you to describe for the folks here the pilot program you've launched that uses your Citizen Entrepreneur Explorers program framework, but you've piloted within that a cogenerational version of it or added an element to it. So tell us about that and how it came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Thank you everyone for having me. It's been such a pleasure, Eunice, to hear all the other folks who are doing their work here. It's inspiring to see the ways that we bring intergenerational people into our college experiences. My way of doing it is to center on the community experience first. So the Citizen Entrepreneur Explorers Program, or CEAP as it's called, was created first as an assignment in my classroom and just a couple of interviews to get the students back into their neighborhoods. And then it evolved into this opportunity to teach them about what research is and how, even as freshmen and sophomores in a community college, they could actually learn how to be great researchers. And at the same time, I said, well, aren't we missing a social impact opportunity here and an opportunity for them to really engage with their neighborhood and with their community? So that's what happened with CEAP over time. And Kaufman funded it a couple of years ago to make it bigger and to make it national. So that's been a process that's been exciting to see and evolve. And then what happened too is a couple of students selected projects that engaged directly with older entrepreneurs who had retired. And instead of me saying no, go out and stick to the template, I said, okay, let's explore with this and see what happens. So that was a year ago that first happened. And since then, we've had the opportunity to connect with a couple of senior centers and really engage with them. And the students can go in and take their research questions. So they formulate a real research question, but then they deliver it back to another group. So they don't deliver it back to the folks they talk to. They can do that too if they want, but they deliver it to, say, a city council person or the Rotary Club or another group in the community, beginning a dialogue, which is really the point of what Citizen, I think, Entrepreneur Explorers do, is they take action and they actually impact their community by beginning dialogues that are directly connected to the community, not dialogues that someone has. Yeah, they have them in their mind, but then they actually have to go out and talk to people about this question instead of sitting in a classroom and just listening, having students talk to each other. So that's how CEAP happened. And I'm just excited that the intergenerational and co-generational components of it emerged from students' own discovery.
I love that. Can you say, sometimes I talk about intergenerational programs or co-generational approaches, and it all seems so like we're naturally wired to be that way. And so we just kind of step into it. But I'm curious, as you layered on this approach to engaging older adults in the community, did you encounter any challenges to modifying kind of an existing framework to be able to be co-generational?
Yeah, students who are pretty resistant to change. I mean, they want change, right? But it's driven by them, it's not driven by someone outside themselves. So, so with that in mind, they said, oh, well, now we have to talk to old people. And I was like, oh no, wait, I'm old. And they're like, yeah, I know, but we're forced to talk to you. So they were like, so that was really interesting to get their feedback on how they were going to find and what it was like to talk to the older generation. But they ended up discovering a lot. And they said it's actually easier to talk to them sometimes than it is some of the busy middle-aged folks that they were trying to talk to before.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And sometimes that's another important role college or university experience can play, is that students, if you give them an assignment, will contend with it. And sometimes even if there's a little resistance or just sense of like, oh, I wouldn't even know how to talk to an older person, you can help scaffold that experience, and then they'll learn by doing and then carry that with them the rest of their life. So I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to switch now to a question that is kind of for anybody here on the panel. I wanted to start with a question about impact. So I think when we hear stories of co-generational action or intergenerational connection between college students and older adults or folks out in the community, we can all have that experience of like, oh, wow, that's so sweet, or that just seems so nice and lovely. But those of us who do this work know that there's actually a direct impact on the community, that there's benefit beyond just relational connection. I'm wondering if any of you would be interested in talking about how you're measuring or how you think about measuring impact because that's going to be important for us to be able to fund more of this work and to help it spread and scale. So I'm happy to have any of you jump in with a perspective.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go for it,
No,
Roderick.
go ahead, Roderick.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'll wait. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just take really briefly with our Digital Connecting Core, or DCC. Our partner in that is also the University of Michigan Ginsburg Center, and they're doing a lot of our data work in this particular. And one of the things that we were measuring is repetition of engagement, the continuous coming back to participate in the programming, both from a student standpoint, college student standpoint, as well as an older person, and the frequency. And with that frequency, are the older adults also ending up becoming mentors to other older adults? And the answer is yes. So in addition to shifting the frequency of engagement, we're also measuring a little bit of the impact of their role changing within that space. So that's a little bit in this kind of 1.5, 2 years of the initiative that we're looking at.
Similar to what you were saying, we're collecting data. We're coordinating a mentoring program, and with this mentoring program, the goal is to get older adult learners who've come back to college to have a mentor, to mentor new adults coming into college. But also the key with that is that those three would connect with 2 students, and it'd be like a mentoring group, right? And every connection that they have, they want to survey each other anytime they meet. And I don't care if it's 5 minutes or hour. Anytime that they meet, they conduct the survey that we have, just to see over time what the outcomes were, what the engagement was like. And we want to see those things that come out of this pilot. The things, and once we find out our things, that's when we're going to take the program to another level. Say the theme is feeling out of touch when I'm on campus. I don't feel engaged. Okay, so now I can go to the chancellor and say, well, most of these older students don't feel connected to the younger students. Can we create a space on campus where the younger students are running it? They're running it. They're signing people in, but it's a space for adult learners, and so that's going to turn into a space of conversation, programming, and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to try to let the data lead us to what they want and need, instead of us trying to just build something and it becomes a dinosaur because we're outdated because we didn't survey the people. So that's how we're going to do it.
That's great, Roderick. I'll layer on an additional question, and Rachel or Shane, feel free to answer this one. And if you have a thought on the other, you can integrate that. But the impact and measurements are so tied to how we can sustain the work and talk about the work and show the impact. I'm curious if you have thoughts on or any information you can share on how you are funding and expanding your work in order to make sure it lives on.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I got funding mainly because I saw that there was a huge need for students to know how to be researchers, but Kaufman saw the need also to create knowledge creators who are younger. So to widen the pipeline, so to speak, and make it very wide at the start of college and not wait for all the researchers and graduate students to come out the bottom down here with a very small pipeline. So that was the motivation behind the funding. And the exciting thing about this cogenerational component is it's like engaging this new vibrancy and that urgency for both sides to talk to each other. So I think that's exciting too. And I did post in the chat the measures that I'm using right now. So if you guys have questions about those, feel free to post them in the chat as well.
Great. Rachel, you want to add anything on either of these questions?
Sure. So over our 9 years of development, our intergenerational work has attracted federal, foundation, and corporate funding, which has all been critical for, leveraging and growing. And actually, just to touch back on that, supported research, it supported programming, it's supporting the development of this co-living initiative, but it's also supporting our measurement. We partnered with, since 2018, with Dr. Ayanna Allen-Handy in the School of Education, and we've been doing community-led participatory action research with her. And so our staff, our team is intergenerational, our research team is intergenerational. And so we've had funding from AmeriCorps to do that work, first on the level of gentrification and displacement in our neighborhoods, and now to measure the impact of public arts programming and civic engagement to create civic innovation. And I can drop a link about that. And we currently have stage 1 funding from the National Science Foundation to create a transferable model for the housing project. And so all those things have really been critical for moving the project forward, building partnerships and getting additional resources.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rachel. I'm going to keep us on our tight time schedule here. So I'm going to have us close out with each of you saying one reason why somebody who's on this call, who's kind of on the fence about cogenerational work on campuses, should give it a try, or you can offer up one piece of advice of something that would help someone who's already engaging in the work do that work better. So let's start with Decky.
I knew it. Okay. So the first thing that came to my mind is that I think it expands the purpose of a university in its community, and as a real co-partner in the community in which it's privileged enough to serve, to share streets with. So to me, it's expanding what a university is and could be. So I think that just seems like a why, an obvious why to me. There's a lot of other whys, but to me, thinking institutionally, that's the why.
Love that. All right, Roderick, you're next.
For me, I always believed in the village, and I think as a village, we have to come together as people and sit down and really learn from each other. I always feel like if someone's been on this earth longer than me, they may not be right all the time, but they've experienced some things that I know nothing about. And so for us to get better as a community and attack these world problems, we need to come together. If not, we can't leave the next generation fight the same problems that's been going and getting passed down. And so we have to come together and discuss these things as a CoGenerate family. And everyone has a seat at the table to express themselves and have a conversation.
Thank you. All right, Rachel, you're up.
Yeah, can I just tag on a little bit to what Roderick just said? Well, I mean, one of the things is I did a meeting earlier this morning with someone who just graduated college, who's entering this work, but actually was connected through somebody on the call through, I think it was Joanne, who's on the call at LaSalle. And she connected me to someone in Nebraska. And so this idea of it takes a village, or all of that, you're invited into this other group of colleagues and cohorts, and the exchange, like what's happening today and what will continue to happen, is really, that's really, really exciting. It's also like, it's institution changing. It really, really is, which is so incredibly necessary.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, Shane, you're going to close us out.
Yeah, this will echo a couple of things that have been said. And I would just say, make sure, this is the part that I was wondering most importantly about, and that is listening very intently to both sides, and making sure that I let them guide the conversation of the research, and not make it about what my project is trying to do, and just let the framework be the space that is for them to play and to enjoy a conversation with each other and to create something together. Beautiful.
Want to express appreciation for all of you. You're not quite done yet. I'm going to give everyone a sense of what's to come. I'm going to invite NJ Pierce to share. She's the one she's in a Harvard Advanced Leadership Institute participant who came to us as a gift to actually be able to do this body of surveying and interviews and research, and in a very short period of time got this group together, basically. So I want to give NJ a chance to share a little bit of a broader view of what she learned from all of you, And then we might have time for like just 1 or 2 questions. If you put them in the chat box, any of us are willing to answer a few questions, but just like a little taste of what's to come. At the end, we're going to break into small groups. You'll have a chance to be in a room with Bobby, NJ, myself, Phyllis, and then our 4 panelists as well. And we can also dig more into questions and hear what you're working on and what would be supportive of you in advancing your co-generational work in those small groups. So over to you, NJ.
Thank you so much, Eunice, Bobby, Phyllis, each of you. I see so many familiar faces on the list, and I've tried to send you notes to say hello, if generally or individually. I wanted to say first, of course, thank you to each of the 4 of you who were willing to be on the spotlight, if you will. I'm going to actually screen share and give you just a taste of what we did with where you all fit into the scheme of the work and some of the key findings I found in the work. And I want to get us to breakouts as quickly as possible. So, but bear with me while I just show you a few slides. Share. Okay. So this came together this fall under the umbrella, as you know, of Campus Compact, and at the time it was encore.org, and during the project switched to CoGenerate, and we were just so fortunate. So we laid out a project that you don't have to look at every piece of it, but it really was, how do we wanted to survey a wide group in the Campus Compact and CoGenerate network. We wanted to synthesize this data, and we wanted to bring you all back together. And that's where we are. Our goal was to really explore the evidence for cogenerational problem solving within higher education. And we didn't know what we were going to find, but you all stepped up and you have shown us that there are many avenues to this work, and that there are also some very interesting themes to the work. I personally came to the work because I was working with a cogenerational team who said, when are the old people going to get out of the way and let the next generation solve the problems? And it led me to say, wait, I don't think you want us out of the way, because we bring long experience. We do have pressure to stay in the game because we're going to be here a lot longer. And we have a lot of access to resources. But you all, the younger group, you have lived experience in today's context, and you're fearless and you're energetic and you bring so much to the table. So how do we bring those strengths to the table, and what does it take to overcome what the older people think of the young and what the younger people think of the old, to come together, spend intentional time together, build some trust and fun, and actually begin to solve some problems. So with that, I'm going to say that what brought me back to the Advanced Leadership Initiative at Harvard, which is basically a program for older adults to come back and figure out how to give back. It's a group of 40 to 60 individuals. About half, for the first time ever, are women. About a third are from other countries. The focus is in great deal on social impact. How do we give back? What is it we need to do to share our wisdom? How do we be role models? How do we mentor? How do we engage in lifelong learning in a productive way? And that was the value under which I came to this program. And my focus was on, how do older adults become more productive? But as this unfolded, what I deeply understood for the first time, and you all, the research, doing the interviews really helped me see this, is that there's a much stronger narrative out there. And most of you already know this, but I will tell you that a lot of baby boomers in particular find this stunning. I showed this chart in front of a group of, 100, 150 people the other day, most of whom were over 50 and many of whom were over 60. I will say that about 50% of the people in the audience took out their cell phone and started taking pictures, because I think what I hear in the most successful projects from you all is that the narrative has changed, if it isn't
it is changing if it hasn't already changed, that we're moving into a much more inclusive narrative that's about community problem solving. It's about working alongside. It's about leading with curiosity. And it's about being a change maker and two-way sharing, all the things that you've just heard from, Decky and Shane and Roderick and Rachel. I mean, and from so many others of you on the call. So I think as we move forward, what's really important is to move toward this narrative in a way that embraces the relational, that's what we heard over and over again, and reciprocal nature of this co-generational work, because that's where it really happens. The other that we've alluded to in different ways, I would like to take you through what also emerged from the research, and that is that this work really works best when it's done in a staging format. And we've heard it described as organic. It can also be intentional, which is creating spaces and convenings where people learn from each other and teach each other. It's not one way, but then the next stage is really learning together. So for me, it was great being in the Advanced Leadership Initiative. Trust me, we had a terrific core curriculum, but where the learning for me came was learning alongside undergrads and graduate students in my engineering class, in my divinity class, in my medical school class. We could take, Harvard has a very unique program that allows you to take courses anywhere across the university or at MIT. So I took an aging class at MIT, and I took a divinity class, and I took all these different courses at the Kennedy School. And it was that learning together and being on a shared path together that truly led to the working together. And I saw it happening over and over again in my own life. And I heard it over and over again in the interviews, and that folded in among itself. And I guess the examples I would give you is that stage one could be one-way mentoring. It's often funded to meet the needs of one or the other population, but as it moves more toward a back and forth, you get a much stronger base. Stage two is about learning environments, concurrent learnings, workshops, the kind of creative workshops, writing workshops, acting workshops that we heard about in the earlier conversations. And then finally, we began seeing those people come strongly together in a way that addresses a deep community need. And Second Story Collective is an excellent example of that. Some of the projects coming out of the work where these young students are going into the neighborhoods with Shane's classes. I mean, each one of you has examples of having organically or systematically moved to a stage three. And I think to the extent that we can understand this staging and understand what the measures and funding needs are at each of these stages, we can learn from each other on how to advance the work. Because after all, the colleges have these gathering spaces. They have convening power in their neighborhoods. They're often a major employer in their neighborhood, as well as being situated in the neighborhood. And they have access to the community and the community resources and to the community problems that are on the street. So with that, I say, let's imagine a world in which we bring sort of the cash competencies and connections of the older generation together with the energy and the fresh and bright ideas of the younger generations. And I think we can make a huge difference. So I think that's about as quick as I can cover that, but I'm more than happy to answer questions or just say again, thank you for the opportunity to do the work with you and for you. So thank you.
Thanks, NJ. So we are, I think, right on time. I see there's a question in the chat box about how we live in a capitalist society and we need money to function, and how can we actually generate more resources to fund intergenerational programs and or have a narrative, a strong narrative of how intergenerational programs contribute to the bottom line. I will say sometimes we at CoGenerate have talked about this every dollar spent twice concept of how when you invest in cogenerational solutions, you spend $1, but you actually are getting $2 worth of value. So I will say, because we really want to prioritize time in small groups for you all to share your answer to that question, I'm going to have Bobby, I think you're probably ready to break us into small groups. And I think we had said, you can do whatever you want in your small group because it's for you, but we're curious, what support do you need from Campus Compact or from CoGenerate as we dig into this cogenerational campus work? If you think that resourcing is something you need, funding, at what level? What could you do with $500? What could you do with $25,000? Like, what's the range of what would just free you up to try something? And then what are the stories that we need more stories basically of this kind of work. From the chat box, I know there's already a lot out there. At Encore, now CoGenerate, we would love to tell some of those stories. That's something that is in our sweet spot. So if you want to source some of those in the small groups, that would be great too. All right, Bobby, over to you.
I think that's it. So we're going to head into the small groups. We're going to have about 20 minutes in there. We're going to come back at 4:15 Eastern time. I know we've got folks all across the country, so wherever you're sitting, in about 20 minutes, because we want to retain the last 15 minutes for if there are additional questions that you didn't feel like got answered that we can talk about, and also for all four of the facilitators, which are myself, NJ, Eunice, and Phyllis, to be able to kind of share what we heard across the board as we take the next steps. So get ready. Everybody's going to head into the rooms now. So welcome back to the main room. It's wonderful to see everyone's faces with videos on. So we have 15 minutes left, or really 13 to be more specific. I thought, while we didn't really talk about this, our co-facilitation group, I thought maybe we could just take 1 to 2 minutes to kind of summarize what were some of those big takeaways that came out of our group, and work to kind of build on each other's comments. Since I'm sure there were some parallels, but definitely a lot of unique ideas, I'm sure, that that started. So I can kick us off and then pass it off to another colleague. We had a really robust conversation in our group that really seemed to center on this question of growth and scale, and what does that look like to do this, and then also what do folks need. So on this question of scale, we talked about the depth and how relational this work is, and that scale sometimes is not the like only answer, and that sometimes scale can be detrimental to a program's real outcome and impacts. But we did talk about the need for replication, and that in order to grow this, we do really need to know where the examples are so that other communities and other institutions can really pick those up and think about what it looks like. There was a lot of interest around the phased approach to NJ that you shared, and really thinking about how that provides a roadmap for institutions and organizations to really think about how to move this forward. Roderick had a good idea around thinking about national chapter approaches around what would it look like to have chapters at universities. And thinking about how to grow this work. I immediately thought of OSHR and thought about the model that OSHR already has in that regard, and thinking about what would it look like to look at that from a university standpoint, particularly focused on students. And we talked a lot about that narrative change and the fact that higher ed is uniquely already intergenerational in nature. And what would it look like to really educate at the highest levels of our institution, understanding cogeneration and the power of intergenerational work. The kind of things that people talked about needing were more of this, more convenience, more ability to bring people together, how helpful, and pages of notes that people had taken, just listening to others and wanting to be able to connect more on Zoom and outside of Zoom also. Engaging alums, that's something that often comes to an institution, but they need more capacity, that institutions are stretched, and particularly the centers and offices that are leading this work, which Compact works with day in and day out, are really stretched and they're resource strained. And so they need funding, they need staffing support, they need stipends for both students and community partners to incentivize participation and to keep them engaged in ways that are also focused through equity. That we need more models, that's a big thing that we did a lot of today. And then the last was, questions that were raised. How do we make sure that it's not episodic, that this isn't just transactional in nature? How do we be intentional about diversity, equity, belonging, and justice in this work? And how do we also use this to redefine lifelong learning as a whole? So with that, I will pass it quickly to Eunice.
We had a great conversation. There were many questions from the group. I'll highlight a few. One, Simon from University of Waterloo talked about the need for a repository of tools or best practices on how to basically move along the spectrum that NJ showed, to go from one directional to shared experience to deeply cogenerational. So is there a way for us to basically provide that toolkit and or to share it across even this group? I did want to say Maggie from Lori's Hands had a nice suggestion for how they make things more cogenerational, in that she said they actually set goals for the olders and youngers. It's really interesting. If you think about, if you're only measuring one thing, it gives you a sense for like, oh, you're probably one directional. What if you just thought about what are the high goals that you have for the other generation? We also talked a bit about how slow it is for things to happen in a university system, and that's really frustrating. I think that resourcing, storytelling, those measures of impact are part of what will help get attention, but also we might need to just be really comfortable going where the water is flowing. And so if that means cogenerational work is happening because of a go-getter professor, or because of a student club that launches something, or because there's a private institution outside the university that has more freedom, we're not at a point yet where we could probably say, here's the one way to make it happen. We need to be like, eyes wide open, hands open, let's go where there's energy, and then double down. And I think it was Rachel in our group who said, identify the talent, the people who are ready to hustle, have energy, resource them, amplify them, and celebrate them. So that's something we could do as a group as well.
Okay. Phyllis, do you want to go next?
Yep, I will, and I'm going to be briefer than my colleagues on this. I tried to extract kind of the essence of the recommendations. First, I'll say that it was a really interesting discussion. We spent a lot of time with each person just introducing themselves, and people came from a very wide array of experience, and what was animating their interest in this. There was an interest in integration, a lot of discussion, and this is about both sustainability and equity, to not view cogen as an add-on, as a nice to have. If it if it could be integrated in the curriculum, it's more likely to both be sustained and equitable in terms of delivery. This is something that was at the core of the service learning movement. And it might be worth looking back to see what the strategy was there around embedding in an institution rather than adding on. There was an interest in an inventory going beyond what's been pulled up by NJ's quick dive, an inventory of programs and places where cogeneration is being done. And then there was that discussion about funding with some ideas about public funding, about foundations that could be interested. So that was the big three: integration, information, and money.
And Jay, you want to close us out?
Sure. I don't know. Let's see if I can do this. Well, look at that. I did it. Okay. So we also spent a good bit, we, like Phyllis, spent some time sort of going around the circle, finding out where different people were coming from. And we had a lot of community partners in our group and not just college campuses. And what I found interesting about the conversation is people that are community partners with campuses were like, gosh, it seems like those universities see value in our programs. Why aren't they doing more? Why aren't they funding or helping to fund the community partnerships? And then we heard Bobby talk about how universities are strapped as well. So I think a lot did come back to funding. So how we think about it, how we promote it, how we support them in looking for funding, whether they're coming from a community partnership or from a campus, is going to be important going forward. The second big takeaway was this idea of what does an inventory of projects look like? So that in terms of, there were people in our group that all right, we haven't done anything. What project where's a great place to start? And one of the things we learned, like what Rachel said, is whether you have a writer's workshop that brings in the community or something that brings your community to the table with your students, it often generates the idea for where you need to start. But just because you've identified a need, how do you then go into this supposed database of ideas and learn where it's been successful and how it's been successful? And the next part of that is, can we have breakout groups or convenings around particular topics like social justice, civic awareness, climate change? So I think there's a lot of opportunities for convening in different ways over different topics, and just lots of curiosity around what's next. And I think we heard from several, how do we make this not just too quick, one-off, transactional, this was fun, but rather really embedding this work as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you, NJ. And so lots of takeaways for us. I will say that for particularly Eunice and I, the kind of organizations that, you know, have committed to being in partnership together, this has been really critical for us, because as we work with NJ and Phyllis and so many of you here, what we really needed to know, I think we really heard a lot about, is what would it take in terms of resources? What are the biggest needs that we need to be thinking about in terms of advocating and trying to identify resources and pathways to doing this work? You know, we're at Campus Compact, you know, we're thinking about this in a design and innovation phase. And I think our partners at CoGenerate are along the same lines. And where we're at right now is really looking to build that roadmap of what this looks going forward. And we do know that there's ways that we can support this.
Go to Estella's house.
Sorry, I have an 11-year-old in my ear, so sorry about that. He's going to Estella's house, if anybody's wondering. But but what we really need to identify is what are the highest priority items. And I think we got that today. So Eunice, do you have any closing comments before we just thank everybody for being here?
No, I just want to say a big thank you. We really can't do this. We can't do this kind of work without the sort of transparent learning and collaboration. I think higher ed often has a reputation for maybe not being the best at sharing what they do. There's a little bit of competition, or like, oh no, we're so unique, but you know, we can't learn from anyone else. To be in this space and to hear the generosity of resources, of ideas, of stories is what we're going to need to bring cogenerational solutions to campuses everywhere. So I just want to end with a lot of gratitude, and stay tuned, because Campus Compact and CoGenerate, we're trying to figure out our play in the higher ed space together. And this is great fodder for that. And we would love to be able to present some next steps at some point in the new year.
Wonderful. And I do want to close with just saying, you know, have a wonderful few weeks as everyone heads into winter break. And Brian is here from Harvard's ALI program. And I got to say, Brian, I'm so glad you're still on. We couldn't have done this without NJ. And I know I speak for Eunice and myself, we are here to be recipients of any support that we can get going forward. This was having NJ was the transformation piece here.
Well, we feel lucky to have had her too. And I'm glad that we can share the love with other folks as well.
Wonderful.
I'll take a fellow, Brian.
Let me tell you, we all love Brian separately. We're ready. If they're anything like NJ, bring one, bring all. But thank you
to our panelists as well.
Yes,
You guys have there's so many great ideas here, but it always takes a little extra prep to be showcased in front of your peers. So thank you, Roderick, Rachel, for all of you. Who else did we have? We had NJ, Shane, we had Shane. Yes. Anyway, we're so appreciative
and
of
Rachel.
You. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll see you all in the new year. I would expect a follow-up email probably in early January from us. We're going to get our things together, and we'll be circling back to everyone then. Thank you, Phyllis, too, who's on the screen, who's gotten us all together.
Phyllis was the instigator of connecting fabric for each of us. And as was Mel at Campus Compact, and Susan Giannino, the chair of CoGenerate. So there were very many, there were lots of connecting threads, And I think what I find is the more threads you add to a piece of fabric, the stronger it is. So I'm delighted to be a part of it. Thank you.
What a lovely ending. Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys. Happy
Bye,
holidays.
everyone.
Merry Christmas, whatever works for you.
Luck, everybody.
Bye now.